So we always hear of various resignations in the Trump administration, and today it seems we're seeing the effects of that. This is a real headline. Trump's New York Times lawsuit dismissed for being too long. What? It's so ridiculous, right? A judge strikes down Trump's $15 billion suit against the New York Times, and then judge strikes down Trump's lawsuit against New York Times over its content. So we got to read this one together. This is such an insane world that we live in, and I keep wondering, like, how does things stay operational there when staff keep quitting? And you can see it doesn't. I think they're using, well, that is part of Trump's plan to use AI and robots to run the show, but the judge doesn't seem to like it. So this is what it says. So it's President Donald J. Trump against the New York Times is a $15 billion lawsuit, and here's the order. As every member of the bar of every federal court knows or is presumed to know, I think the judges must have a sense of humor here. Rule 8, the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure requires that a complaint include, quote, a short and plain statement of claim showing that the pleader is entitled to relief. Okay, so short and plain. Helpfully adds that each averment of the pleading shall be simple, concise, and direct. So I think Trump is unable to do this. Some pleadings are necessarily longer than others, okay? Differences likely depends on the number of parties, claims, the complexity of the governing facts, and the duration and scope of pertinent events. So it means that sometimes you can write something long, right? So it just depends on the situation. But both a shorter pleading and longer pleading must comprise simple, concise, and direct allegations. Okay, this is what the rule is. Basically, be competent in how you write your lawsuit. That offers short and plain statement of claim. Rule 8 governs every pleading in a federal court, regardless of the amount of controversy, the identity of the parties, the skill or reputation of the counsel. So that's basically saying, regardless of is your lawyer competent, not competent, or even famous? It goes through a lot of this stuff. The urgency or importance. So, this all depends on the different case. Real or imagined. That's pretty fun. Even if Trump imagines whatever lawsuit or whatever crime, you still got to write your lawsuit in the right way. Of the dispute or any public interest at the issue of the dispute. In this action, a prominent American citizen, perhaps the most prominent American citizen, that's referring to Trump, alleges defamation by a prominent American newspaper publisher, and this would be the case New York Times, perhaps the most prominent American newspaper publisher, and by several other corporate and natural persons, alleging only 2 simple counts of defamation. The complaint consumes 85 pages. So the judge is saying, you got a famous, complaint from a famous person against a famous newspaper with 2 simple, things they're trying to prove. But you write 85 pages. Count 1 appears on page 80 and count 2 appears on page 83. And the judge is probably like, why are you making me read all this crap, right? Pages 1 through 79 plus part of page 80 present allegations common to both counts to all defendants, okay? Each count alleges a claim that each defendant, and apparently each claim seeks the same remedy against each defendant. Why are you being repetition? I think this is a chat GPT thing. It's kind of like how Trump has his trade letters all kind of sounding the same exactly. And it's funny because Trump always complains about Biden with auto pens kind of stuff. I mean, this sort of thing, this complaint here that the judge is, I guess, complaining against Trump shows how incompetent the Trump people are. I don't usually see this. This is funny. Even under the most generous and lenient application of Rule 8, the complaint is decidedly improper and impermissible. The pleader initially alleges an electoral victory by President Trump, quote, in historic fashion, okay, by, quote, trouncing the opponent, and alludes to persistent election interference from legacy media and led mostly notoriously by the New York Times. So basically, they're using kind of Trumpy words here. Trump's trying to claim that, I trounced Harris in the election, and why doesn't the media say that? That's kind of what Trump's complaining here. The pleader alludes to halcyon days of the newspaper, but complains that the newspaper has become a full-throated mouthpiece of the Democrat Party. Okay, so Trump's complaining that New York Times is, I guess, too much with the Democrats. That's what Trump claims, which allegedly resulted in a deranged endorsement. The language of the thing is so stupid, but this is how dumb and crazy Trump is, and it sounds stupid too when you put it in a lawsuit. But stupid language doesn't necessarily mean the lawsuit's thrown out that way. It's mostly because it's too much of stupid language of Trump's principal opponent in the most recent presidential election. The reader of the complaint must labor through allegations like, why are you making me read all this crap? Such as, quote, a new journalistic low for a hopelessly comprised, tarnished gray lady. Okay. I don't even understand the gray lady thing. I really don't, actually. Or maybe referring to New York Times, I guess. That's probably what it is. The reader must endure an allegation of, quote, the desperate need to defame with partisan spear rather than report with, quote, authentic looking glass. And an allegation that, quote, the false narrative that about The Apprentice was just the tip of the near of defendants' melting iceberg of falsehoods. I didn't realize the original lawsuit had all of this kind of Trumpy kind of language to it. It is pretty funny. I guess he's mad if you call out the Apprentice as being a bunch of nonsense, meaning that Trump, it was just a TV show. Trump's not really a good CEO, etc. That's interesting. So Trump gets mad at that kind of stuff if you say that. Similarly, in one of many, often repetitive and laudatory towards President Trump, but superfluous allegations, the pleader states, quote, The Apprentice represented the cultural magnitude of President Trump's singular brilliance, which captured the zeitgeist of our time. I knew Trump was suing the New York Times, but I didn't know they were saying all this stupid crap in there. And also too, I'm not going to read 85 pages of this crap. It's actually more funny to read the judge make fun of it. This is hilarious, to be honest. The complaint continues with allegations of defense of President Trump's father and acquisition of Trump's wealth, right? Because this is against a book. There was a book out there that Trump didn't like, and basically all the stuff is just telling the truth about Trump, that him and his family are incompetent, corrupt, blah, 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 right? And he gets upset at that. With protracted list of many properties owned, developed, or managed by the Trump Organization, and a list of President Trump's many books with a long account of the history of The Apprentice, okay? With extensive list of President Trump's media appearances. So they're trying to make the case, well, Trump was on TV. He's a TV star, so therefore, he must be awesome. That's literally the argument that they're making. With a detailed account of other legal actions, both by and against Trump, including the account of Russian collusion hoax. And it's just so crazy. I wonder if they use ChatGPT to say, take all the stupid stuff that Trump has ever said and put it all in the lawsuit. Is that what they did? It sounds like it, honestly. Although I guess, to be fair, that would be a million pages long, but it's every day something stupid. So they were complaining about the Russian collusion hoax, he calls it, quotes, the incidents of alleged lawfare against President Trump with much more persistently alleged in abundant, fluid, and enervating detail, okay? Even assuming each allegation in the complaint is true, of course, that is for a jury to decide and is not pertinent here. This order suggests nothing about the truth of the allegations or the validity of the claims, but addresses only the manner of the presentation of the allegations in the complaint, okay? Even assuming that at trial, the plaintiff offers evidence supporting every allegation in the complaint and that the evidence is accepted by the jury as fact, and even assuming that after finally melting the defendant's alleged, quote, icebergs of falsehoods, the plaintiff prevails for each reason alleged in the complaint, and even assuming all of that, a complaint remains an improper and impermissible place for tedious and burdensome aggregation of prospective evidence. For the rehearsal of I can't know these words. Tendentiousness is like a GRE or a LSAT or a I can't even think of the first one that you take, the high school one, the SAT test, arguments, or for the protracted recitation and explanation of legal authority, punitively supporting the pleader's claim for relief. And this is funny too. As every lawyer knows, or is presumed to know, so you should know this if you're a lawyer, a complaint is not a public forum for vituperation or invective, not a protected platform to rage against an adversary. So you can't just, go on and on and on and on and on about how much you hate said person. Just file your lawsuit, show your, what you're claiming, etc. And it also, the judge also says, a complaint is not a megaphone for public relations or a podium for a passionate oration at a political rally or a functional equivalent of a Hyde Park speaker's corner. So, when you file a lawsuit, don't act like that you have a megaphone standing on a soapbox, like this crazy person on the street corner. Okay. A complaint is a mechanism to fairly, precisely, directly, soberly, and economically inform the defendants in a professionally constrained manner consistent with the dignity of the adversarial process in an Article 3 Court of the United States of the nature and content of the claims. A complaint is a short, and this is basically the judge teaching, Trump and Trump's lawyers, like how to carry out a lawsuit and carry out the law. A complaint is a short, plain, direct statement of allegations of fact sufficient to create a facially plausible claim for relief and sufficient to permit the formulation of an informed response. Although lawyers receive a modicum of expressive latitude in pleading the claim of a client, the complaint in this action extends far beyond the outer bound of that latitude. This complaint stands unmistakably and inexcusably athwart the requirements of Rule number 8. Remember, keep it concise. This action will continue, and will end in accord with the rules of procedure and in a professional, dignified manner. The complaint is a key, struck down, right? Struck with leave to amend with 28 days. You got to do it in about a month, right? 28 days. The amended complaint must not exceed 40 pages. Oh, God. So they submitted 85. So the next one you got to submit it, cut it in half, excluding only the caption, the signature, and any attachment. Ordered in Tampa, Florida. Wow, that was in Trump's September 19th, 2025. So I have never seen something like this before, but there's a lot of things that in this Trumpy timeline that we've never seen before. And it's like Trump is trying to, I guess, use one of his lawyers from Trump University. And when they went to court, it just feels like we're in idiocracy land. So that's what's going on. I want to give you an update of this one. And again, Trump's lawsuit against the New York Times is right for now struck down for the next 28 days because it was too long and frankly written like an idiot. So that's my thoughts. I want to hear yours, and I'll catch you all in the next video.